What would happen if the Three Gorges Dam collapsed in 2026? This isn't just any dam. It is the largest hydroelectric structure ever built by humans. It holds back nearly 40 billion cubic meters of water, enough to reshape an entire country in hours. Scientists have said the dam is so massive, it has slightly altered the Earth's rotation. Satellite images have shown subtle deformations along parts of the dam wall. Chinese engineers have acknowledged structural stresses, landslides, and long-term risks tied to extreme rainfall. And beneath it all lies one uncomfortable truth. If this dam were to fail, there would be no slow flood. In this video, we simulate the first 24 hours after the collapse of the Three Gorges Dam. And it is worse than your imaginations. It is early morning in central China. The Yangtze River flows calmly, exactly as it has for decades. Cargo ships move slowly through the water. Fishermen prepare their nets. In apartments overlooking the river, people drink tea, check their phones, and get ready for work. Nothing feels unusual. No alarms, no sirens, no warnings. But something is terribly wrong. Inside the Three Gorges Dam, pressure has been building silently. Years of extreme rainfall, reservoir stress, and internal structural fatigue have pushed the world's largest hydroelectric dam beyond its limits. Microscopic cracks have been spreading through the concrete for months, invisible fault lines threading through the massive structure. The reservoir level has remained at a dangerous 175 meters through an unusually intense monsoon season. Deep within the dam's foundation, steel reinforcements corrode under constant hydraulic pressure. Chinese engineers have debated the dam's vulnerabilities for years. Back in 2003, geologist Fan Xiao warned that the reservoir was built over seismic fault lines. In 2011, the Chinese government admitted the dam faced urgent problems, but nobody expected this. At 6:42 in the morning, a deep structural rupture occurs inside Section 12 of the dam wall. A void opens instantly, redistributing millions of tons of pressure. The collapse propagates through adjacent sections like falling dominoes. Within 90 seconds, a breach opens that is over 300 meters wide. The Three Gorges Dam fails. The reservoir contains 39.3 billion cubic meters of water. That's enough to fill 15 million Olympic swimming pools. When the structure gives way, gravity takes over with brutal physics. The water doesn't flow, it detonates forward. The sound is unlike anything in nature, a low, earth-shaking roar that rattles windows 50 kilometers away. The initial wave reaches heights of over 100 meters near the breach, taller than a 30-story building, carrying massive chunks of concrete, each piece weighing thousands of tons. Within 8 minutes, a moving wall of destruction races downstream at speeds exceeding 100 kilometers per hour. The first city in its path is Yichang, home to 4.1 million people. At this hour, the city is alive. Traffic moves through intersections. The Yichang East Railway Station processes thousands of morning commuters. Street vendors serve steaming bowls of noodles. Children in blue and white uniforms walk to school. The city sits just 38 kilometers downstream of the dam, close enough that some residents work at the dam itself, proud of the engineering marvel that employs their families. They trust the dam. It has always been there. At 7:13 in the morning, a traffic camera on Yichang's Riverside Highway captures the last normal moment. Cars moving, a cyclist waiting at a red light, the river calm in the background. 2 minutes later, the wave arrives. There is no warning, no time to run. The flood front strikes the western districts with the kinetic force of a sustained explosion. The wave is not water anymore. It is a slurry of concrete, steel, vehicles, and debris moving at highway speed. Entire apartment blocks are sheared off at ground level. The Zhejiang Bridge, completed in 2001, snaps in half, its center section simply gone. But some people survive the initial impact. Zhang Wei, a construction worker on the 18th floor of a residential tower, feels the building shudder. He runs to the window and sees something impossible. His entire neighborhood is gone, replaced by churning brown water. His building tilts 5 degrees. Water is already climbing the stairwell. He has maybe 3 minutes. He doesn't make it. Nobody on floors below 15 makes it. The city goes dark. Emergency services never respond because they no longer exist. Within 12 minutes, 70% of Yichang is underwater or destroyed. The wave keeps moving. As the flood continues downstream, it spreads wider across the Yangtze River Valley. By the time it reaches Jingzhou with a 5.7 million population, the wave has dropped to 30 meters high, but the volume is immense. Jingzhou is built on flat plains, surrounded by levees designed for seasonal flooding. The Yangtze here normally flows at 1.5 meters per second. The flood surge arrives at 15 meters per second, 10 times normal flow. The levees fail in sequence, each breach releasing pressure that accelerates the next failure. The destruction here is different. It's not a single wave. It's a sustained inundation that pours across farmland and into residential zones for hours. And this is where the secondary crisis begins. Jingzhou's industrial zones house chemical plants, fertilizer factories, and fuel storage facilities. As water floods these areas, thousands of tons of chemicals mix into the current. Ammonia, chlorine, petroleum products. The water turns toxic. Anyone who survives the flood now faces contaminated water that burns skin and lungs. But there's something else nobody calculated. As the flood destroys hundreds of electrical substations simultaneously, the sudden collapse of the regional power grid creates voltage spikes that fry communication equipment across 3 provinces. Mobile networks don't just overload, they die completely. China goes communication dark across its entire central region. Up to this point, everything you've seen is still considered survivable. What happens next is what turns this into the worst man-made disaster in human history. Because ahead lies Wuhan. Wuhan is not just a city, it is the city. Population 11.3 million. It's China's transportation heart, where the Beijing-Guangzhou Railway crosses the Yangtze. It's an industrial powerhouse producing automobiles, steel, and pharmaceuticals. It's a technological hub with major data centers. If Wuhan falls, China's economy doesn't just stumble, it fractures. At first, people there only hear rumors. Social media fills with conflicting reports. Some posts show apocalyptic scenes from upstream. Others claim they're AI-generated fakes or old footage. The Yangtze still looks normal from the city's elevated viewing points along the riverside. Then, at 12:47 in the afternoon, the last functioning monitoring station upstream transmits its final reading before going offline. Flow rate, 780,000 cubic meters per second. For context, normal flow is 10,000 cubic meters per second. Emergency broadcasts begin, but most people don't receive them because the grid is already failing. Those who do hear the warnings face an impossible choice. Evacuate millions of people with maybe 90 minutes notice. Where do you go when the entire valley is the danger zone? The Wuhan metro system becomes a death trap. Line 2 runs in a tunnel beneath the Yangtze. When the flood arrives, water pours into 19 stations simultaneously. Thousands seeking shelter underground find themselves caught as water cascades down escalators and stairwells. The tunnels fill completely within 8 minutes. Above ground, the city's famous Yangtze River Bridge, completed in 1957, a symbol of national pride, holds for almost 40 minutes. Then the central span collapses, taking hundreds of vehicles and an unknown number of people with it. But something unexpected happens in Wuhan that changes everything. The city's high-rise construction saves thousands. Wuhan has over 200 buildings taller than 30 stories. As water floods ground levels, people instinctively move up. Entire communities form on upper floors, vertical refugee camps, trapped but alive. One survivor, Liu Min, live streams from the 35th floor of the Wuhan Center Tower. The video, later recovered, shows water surrounding the building, vehicles floating past like toys, fires burning on the water's surface where fuel has leaked. She says, "We can see other buildings. Some have lights. We flash our phone lights to signal we're alive. Nobody is coming. The helicopters can't land." Her building holds. She survives. 50,000 others in similar situations survived the first day. But Wuhan's survival creates a new crisis. 50,000 people trapped without food, clean water, or medical supplies, surrounded by toxic floodwater, with no way to evacuate. While the world focuses on downstream destruction, something catastrophic is happening back at the dam site. The emptying reservoir triggers massive geological instability. The Three Gorges Reservoir had been holding back enormous water pressure against mountainsides for over 20 years. When that pressure suddenly disappears, entire slopes collapse. The town of Zigui, population 170,000, sits on the reservoir's northern bank. As the water level drops 100 meters in just 6 hours, the saturated earth gives way. A landslide containing an estimated 50 million cubic meters of earth and rock buries the lower town completely. Similar collapses occur at 17 other locations around the former reservoir. Villages that survived the initial flood are obliterated by secondary landslides. Chinese seismologists detect the pressure change as far away as Japan. The sudden redistribution of 39 billion cubic meters of water creates measurable crustal flexure. The Earth's crust literally bends in response. By evening, the flood reaches the Yangtze River Delta and Shanghai, population 24 million. Here, physics creates a completely different disaster. The flood arrives as the tide comes in from the East China Sea. Instead of pushing the floodwater out, the tide holds it back, creating a massive hydraulic dam. Water backs up across hundreds of square kilometers. Shanghai's Pudong district, built on reclaimed land barely above sea level, floods from below. Drainage systems reverse, subway tunnels fill. The city's famous financial district, home to the Shanghai Stock Exchange and hundreds of international banks, goes dark. The port of Shanghai, the world's busiest container port, shuts down completely. Over 43,000 shipping containers are lost or damaged. Global supply chains immediately feel the impact. Within hours, factory shutdowns cascade across Asia, Europe, and North America. The economic shockwave moves at the speed of digital finance. Markets open in New York to chaos. China's GDP takes an estimated 15% hit in a single day, a loss of over $2.5 trillion. This is no longer a natural disaster. It is a global economic event. 24 hours after the collapse, the flood has traveled over 1,800 kilometers from the dam to the sea. The statistics are almost incomprehensible. An estimated 15 to 20 million people directly affected, 400 million people without clean water, 67 cities partially or completely flooded, over 3 million buildings damaged or destroyed, economic losses exceeding $3 trillion. But numbers cannot capture what has really happened. The Yangtze River basin produces 40% of China's grain, 70% of its rice, and 40% of its GDP. Entire harvests are destroyed. Pharmaceutical factories are offline. Steel production stops. The world's supply of antibiotics, rare earth elements, and electronics components is suddenly, catastrophically disrupted. Rescue efforts are overwhelmed. The People's Liberation Army mobilizes 300,000 troops, but they cannot reach most affected areas. Roads are gone, railways are severed, airports are flooded, helicopters can only extract a few hundred people per hour. International aid begins to arrive. Japan sends rescue teams, the United States offers satellite imaging, the UN activates emergency protocols, but the scale is too vast. And then, the secondary crises begin. Contaminated water leads to cholera outbreaks within 72 hours. Hospitals are destroyed or inaccessible. Bodies in floodwater create disease vectors. Summer heat accelerates decomposition. The death toll, initially in hundreds of thousands, begins climbing toward millions as disease spreads. Refugees, over 30 million people, move toward unaffected regions, creating the largest human migration in history. Cities like Chengdu, Xi'an, and Guangzhou are overwhelmed. Food shortages develop even in areas the flood never touched. The Three Gorges Dam was built to control nature, to tame the Yangtze, to power China's rise. It cost $37 billion and displaced 1.3 million people. It was supposed to protect 15 million people downstream from flooding. In this scenario, it becomes the very weapon that destroys them. This is not a prediction. Chinese authorities maintain the dam is safe, with multiple redundancy systems and constant monitoring. Total structural failure is considered extremely unlikely by most engineers, but extremely unlikely is not impossible. This simulation is based on real hydrology, actual city locations, genuine population data, and physics. Every flow rate, every timeline, every consequence follows from one terrible question. What if? The first 24 hours would not be defined by rescue or recovery. They would be defined by speed, by water moving faster than human systems could respond, by decisions made too late, by the terrible realization that some disasters are simply too large to stop. For the millions living along the Yangtze, there would be no second chance. And for the world watching, there would be one inescapable lesson. The greatest risks we face are not the disasters we plan for. They are the disasters we assume could never happen. If this simulation made you rethink how fragile modern civilization really is, subscribe. Because the next story is even closer to home.